Welcome to Green TV. This is the second edition of 2022. I'm a friend of mine, I'm happy to say, in the green world. And she is Diane MacEachern. And she was really the first person I met, maybe the first woman who was like way deep into it when I started. And what I mean, not just as a scientist, there's certainly more of those and people who were in technology and that kind of thing, but someone who was really speaking to consumers, someone who was really talking about the ways that people could get involved and have an impact. And she came to my attention when we both got to speak on a panel at the Texas Women's Conference. Welcome, Diane. Thank you for reminding me.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
And I do believe you are one of the ones who encouraged me to do something online on my own, like give up on the networks years ago. So I hope you check out Green TV if you haven't had a chance yet.
I love it. And I'm so thrilled that you've gotten it off the ground. It's really great.
Thank you. I know you were one of Glamour Magazine's eco heroes. I would say that that's a shiro in my book.
Thank you.
Big Green Purse and several other books. But I know I started to say that we were on a panel at the Texas Women's Conference in Austin, Texas, where I now live when I'm not in New York. And it was such a pleasure to meet you. I was following your work online, of course, but we really, I think at that point, bonded. We just realized we were coming from the same place. We've got to get the masses involved or it won't matter. And you came up with a really clever, effective way to do that. And that really is the Big Green Purse concept. Tell our viewers what you had in mind and how that has not manifested, but womanifested.
Well, the idea really was born out of frustration that so little was happening and that everything that seemed to be making a difference had to happen on Capitol Hill. I'm based just outside Washington, D.C. and have spent a lot of time on the Hill. And, it's so polarized. It's more polarized now than when I started Big Green Purse. But what I was trying to figure out was where could we have an impact that didn't involve Capitol Hill and legislation and all this behind the scenes lobbying, so on. And how could we mobilize women? Because women spend 85 cents of every dollar in the marketplace. And of course, most of what we're trying to do is impact the manufacture of goods in the production of services. And it was literally a green light bulb. One day I thought, oh my God, if we could go to talk to women about how they spend their money, and shifting that spending to products and services that do the best job of protecting the environment, maybe we could have an impact.
And did you?
And that was the idea of Big Green Purse. And I have to say that I feel like I was sort of alone, like you too. I think that happens with people who are sort of on the cutting edge. You come up with an idea and then you really have to figure out ways to get it some traction. I think now the idea that what we do in the marketplace can get manufacturers to reduce pollution and save energy and so on, it really has taken off. And I think a lot of women do think, what can I do? My money is my power. I mean, I always say the very most important thing is to vote. But you only get to vote every couple of years. People spend money every day.
Right.
And you can use your money to protect yourself, your family, your community, and pressure manufacturers to do the right thing. So in a way, I think Big Green Purse is the whole package in that regard.
Every day we decide, like you say, what to eat, where to shop. We decide what to drive at some point, where to buy a house, what kind of a house to build, if not purchase or rent, and all those things do add up. And there's been such a lack of, consciousness and awareness. It has gotten better since we first met, more than a decade ago, but it's still, there's so much educating to do. What have you seen over these years that has both inspired and depressed you? Let's just kind of get that out of the way. So the best news, and then what still keeps you up at night? Probably the same things that keep me up at night.
Well, what I worry the most about is the loss of nature. We are losing nature. We are losing animals and plants. We're losing birds and bees and the insects that pollinate the crops that create the food that we eat, and just the beauty of nature. I would say for me, fundamentally, I have a very strong spiritual connection with nature, with creation, and it's being destroyed. And that's happening at a very, very rapid rate. Things are happening in the climate so quickly that nature can't keep up. Nature historically evolves at a pretty slow pace and at a pace that makes the sustaining of nature possible. The climate change is outpacing evolution. And so one of the things that most distresses me is the loss of nature. However you describe it, we're losing it.
We're losing, right.
But on the positive side, we do know more now than we knew when I first started looking at climate change, which was when I was in graduate school in the 1970s, so a long time ago. We didn't have the technologies. We didn't have electric vehicles, and we didn't have wide adoption of solar energy, and we didn't have all these conservation technologies.
We didn't have the internet where we could communicate.
We didn't have the internet. There was just, we knew the problem was going to be severe in the 70s, but we didn't necessarily have the solutions other than really accelerating the transition to, if we'd started investing in all these technologies 40 years ago, we'd be so much farther ahead. On the other hand, we do know what the solutions are. And so if we start using energy more efficiently and switch to cleaner forms of energy and not wasting so much in terms of fuel and food and all these things, we can still make a dent. But so I guess that's the bright side. But in the meantime, we're just going to lose a lot of nature. And I think people need to get back out into nature to realize they want to save it. I look outside my office window and I have a bird feeder out there. Well, now I notice that the birds are arriving earlier than the insects that they feed on are showing up. So then the birds go hungry. It's these little things that are happening. Or, my house, I've been in I'm outside Washington, D.C. I've been in 3 hurricanes, and every one of them causes thousands of dollars of damage.
And they didn't used to get hurricanes in DC and New York.
Rarely, very, very rarely. Ida, which just came through in September, it just came through here. It took down one of my big trees and it cost $1,500 to get rid of that tree. You know what I mean? So I think that what people really need to understand is, and again, it gets too political, but if you love nature, if there's any, you like to go to the beach, you like to go for a walk in the woods, you even going to your local park, you love robins, you love cardinals, you love blue jays, you have to realize that they're all threatened by what's going on right now.
By us, humans. I'm sure you share my frustration during the last 2 decades in particular, and that's when climate scientists say we really should have been acting. If we had done this 20 years ago, we wouldn't be up against the wall quite so much and have to do things that are almost impossible to imagine us actually accomplishing, cutting our emissions in half in less than a decade, et cetera. During those 2 decades, you've been trying to get attention. I've been trying to get the mainstream media, the networks that I was on, to have to leave CBS to become an environmental, media expert. These were wasted years, and they were such critical years, and so now we're like, whoa, people are getting scared. And then you see this phenomenon that was almost predictable, sadly, and it's coming true, it seems, where people went from problem? What are you talking about, Betsy? Climate crisis, you're exaggerating, to, oh yeah, we're screwed. Of course, there's nothing we can do. It's too late. And what about that sweet spot in the middle, as I like to say? Where were people, and it's not like nobody was listening and taking action, but certainly not enough of the mainstream, and still not enough. But it's people are waking up now. All the research shows people are concerned, curious, want to know what they can do, and don't necessarily know what to do. And that's why we created Green TV, to be part of that answer, one-stop shopping. But also people are just kind of freezing and getting paralyzed because it's so overwhelming.
Right. I hate to say that we need more regulation because it's so hard to get regulation. And we've seen what happens around COVID. People just are very, very resistant. On the other hand, many people will not do the right thing unless there's an extremely strong incentive to do it, or unless there is a really strong disincentive not to act. And so I'm very heartened when I see EPA, for example, strengthening clean air regulations or improving fuel efficiency standards, those kind of.
Undoing all the damage that Donald Trump set
Right.
back, all those hard fought victories that should have been no brainers, given we all need to breathe.
Right.
Last time I checked. And so, yeah, it just feels like it's, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back or something. And we just so cannot afford that right now as the climate window to act closes. And then there's Build Back Better stuck in limbo, legislative limbo. I mean, in 2022, as we've seen, I mean, look what just happened in Kentucky. My God, the fire tornadoes, the flooding, the hurricanes. How can anybody think that this is not the most important thing we could possibly do? And then especially when there's 2, particular representatives that are holding back progress for our children and grandchildren's future. Isn't it maddening? And you live right there in DC.
Right.
But you want to go strangle somebody some days? Somebody?
Well, what I think people need to realize is that it is really in their own best interest to use energy more efficiently, to use clean energy, and to waste less. I mean, if you sort of have that as your umbrella, it's just going to save you money. And I think that if you let yourself be bandied about by political interests who want to maintain the status quo, they're doing it at a cost to you. I mean, every time you save energy, you save money. I used to say when I wrote a little book called Beat High Gas Prices Now, and it was about how you save money when you're driving. And I used to say nobody would go put a pile of money in the driveway and set it on fire. You wouldn't do that. You would say, that's real money. I'm not going to set it on fire. But when you waste energy, that's exactly what you're doing. And yet somehow there's this sense that, well, we've got endless supplies of energy. It doesn't matter if we have how much energy we have. We should be using less of whatever we have. We should be using less to save money and to reduce pollution and to stop climate change. It's just that simple.
Exactly.
So, I think that's really the message, that it's so in your self-interest, regardless of what anybody says.
Right. And I don't know if you remember, but I started with a couple of other moms from Marin, a grassroots campaign called Don't Be Fueled. Mothers.
Oh, right. I love that.
And we were trying to, at that point, this is like 2002, right after we went into Iraq because of oil, and John Kerry and maybe John McCain had introduced fuel efficiency legislation to improve CAFE standards, and it went down to defeat. And we said, this is crazy. And, since then, we were 20 years ahead of the curve. And
right.
Since then, to watching these cycles where the price of gas goes down and not everybody, too many people, Americans run out and buy a big SUV because it's affordable, even though they're going to be wasting money on gas, not to mention what's coming out of the tailpipes. And it's so much more than money. Money is replaceable. It's gettable. Another habitable planet, not so much.
Right.
This narrow view of things. It's all about money. And, even recent research showed that people are concerned about climate, but they're not necessarily willing to pay more than a tiny amount more for products. But it's not even more expensive to get solar anymore because you can lease solar, and
you can lease it. There are so many subsidies for it. But I think that there does have to be this mindset shift. It's like with a car. We don't need a car. We need transportation. Right? It's like people focus on the delivery mechanism as opposed to what the end goal is. I gave up my car for 4 years. I had a Prius, and I thought, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to actually give up my car. Now, I live in an urban area, so I have mass transit. I've got Lyft. I can rent a car. I can share a car. I can walk a million places.
You're walking the talk or driving it. Good for you.
But it was just one of those things where I realized I didn't need the vehicle. I needed the destination. I needed a way to get to the destination. And one thing that was very interesting about that experiment was not experiment. It was my way of life for 4 years. So many people in my neighborhood said, please borrow my car, because 90% of the time it's sitting in my driveway. Well, that's great. You don't need that car 90% of the time. So it's one of those things where I think that I became very focused on what's the best way to get to my destination, as opposed to what's the best car I can buy. And I think that it's the same with energy. You know, we don't need coal, we don't need natural gas, we don't even need solar, we need heat and we need AC. So what's the sensible way to get those things? And if you keep focused on the commodity, you'll never get off the dime. You know, you really have got to focus on what the service is that you need and go from there.
Do you think that we really can make a transition to, majority renewable energy in the near term? Because as much as we're calling for that and we need it, and the sun is free and there's no sun spills, or at least they don't cause any problems if they're happening, sun spills, what is that? And there's wind power, especially even in Texas, where I now live part-time. But if we really did, do we have a grid that can support that being the primary source of energy?
I think that if we maximized energy efficiency, we would need so much less energy. So for example, overall, in terms of total energy that's generated, we're only using about 14% of that, 1/4. So much is lost in transmission, and then so much is wasted. And just even think in your house, if you live in a house that's poorly insulated, or you've got an old HVAC system, or whatever the reason is, you're just not using the energy efficiently in your house. So if we started by, there's all this talk about, let's continue to subsidize coal or oil or natural gas. What if we took all that money and said, let's insulate every house and building in the United States?
The fact
right? What if we said, let's get rid of all these old refrigerators? I mean, the refrigerator is the appliance because it's plugged in. It uses, apart from your HVAC system, it uses more energy than anything in your house. Well, how many people have really old refrigerators?
Or more than one.
So why not use that money? And I haven't done the calculation, so I don't know how much energy demand would be reduced just by upgrading to the most efficient options available. But here we are subsidizing oil and subsidizing coal and natural gas. Take those subsidies and actually retrofit houses and start from there. Then I think that the new energy that we need, it becomes manageable, and it's very doable.
It's insanity to be fueling and funding our demise in 2022.
Right. Exactly.
And you're talking about waste, and that's what got me into this. It's my entry-level drug, as someone said, doing trash talk so many years ago. I just hate food waste, energy waste, water, wasting time, and yet we're still doing it. So I tell people to put on the green glasses. These are kind of teal colored, and look around and see where in your environment you can conserve, in your home, in your office. If you go to an office, your child's school, community center, there's so many, and make it a game. There's so many ways you can conserve, and you will save money and you will feel better. I mean, I just cannot stand the mindless waste. And I hope, if nothing else, these climate disasters, this extreme weather events we're having, will make people more conscientious about that. It's not just about money you're saving a future for your kid. I say, if you see the expression, if you see something, say something, in connection with terrorist threats. I say, if you see something, save something, say something for tomorrow, especially things you really don't need or not even aware you're using.
Right. I mean, food waste is really a big one. It's not just about food. It's about the packaging that goes into the food. It's about what happens to all that food you throw away. And it does seem like a lot of people are concerned, people hate throwing away food, and we buy too much food. We buy too much processed and packaged food. But if somehow you don't want to put in an LED light bulb, or you don't want to drive a fuel efficient car, for goodness sake, you don't need to waste all that food. And that's a good place to start. I mean, I do a thing at my house where on Sundays, I go to my farmer's market. I get a whole bunch of wonderful vegetables and fresh food, and I come home, I clean out the refrigerator, I cook everything that it's old before I put the new stuff in. And I find I just waste very little food that way.
Isn't it fun? I find that to be, a creative cooking process. What can I make and use,
Right.
And we compost. And I'm actually in an apartment building in New York that actually has composting. Not everybody on the floor is using it, which drives me nuts. But, once you get used to composting food, I don't know if you can do it where you live, but I've done it for so long that when I go, on vacation or renting a place or in a hotel and I'm cooking, I can't stand to throw that food away in the garbage. A rind is a terrible thing to waste. Food is just, sausage rinds, melon rinds, just like it's painful, physically painful. Now, if you and I could take this green gene that we seem to have maybe been born with, I don't know, and could transplant it, aren't we, how are we doing with cloning? Then we could go home and we could take up tennis, right? If only everyone felt like us. I mean, isn't it funny? Like it's almost like fingers on a blackboard, when I see people waste. And my family, gets mad at me sometimes, like, give me a break. But, somebody's got to be the squeaky wheel. Speaking of squeaky.
Yeah.
But it's
and I think, it just seemed like millennials are plugging in a lot, which is great. And, we have to make it seem like it's the norm, not the exception to the norm. It's got to be the norm.
We're social creatures. Yeah, that's what the research shows, that if you see your neighbors putting solar panels on, and then more of your neighbors will inquire about them. But if you don't see anyone, and then there's the news, if you don't see it talked about every evening on the news or 24/7 on CNN, other than occasional mention, which is better than the former climate silence, you think, well, how bad could it be? And then I think that's what they're doing. And they blame, it's not popular, it's a ratings killer, all that garbage. Guess what? It's not. People do want to know what to do. I know that for a fact from my radio show. So years ago, it's whoever thought, I don't know about you, when growing up, that this would be, that our very existence would be threatened, and in such a short time. And the onset of climate disasters has come so much faster than even the scientists had expected. And yet we still don't see the stop the presses like we did with COVID. It was on 24/7. It finally knocked politics off the cable news shows 24/7. Why don't we do the same thing with climate? And by the way, there's an environmental connection to pandemics, right? A unhealthy planet is going to be more unhealthy people. And those drivers.
Well, and also what scientists are finding is that in cities where air pollution is bad, there is more COVID. Sure. People are more susceptible to serious impacts from COVID if they're already living in an environment where the air quality is bad. So it's linked to so many things. Poison ivy is getting worse because of climate change. A hotter climate means stronger plants.
How about Lyme disease? All these insect
Lyme disease, dengue,
West Nile virus. Yeah.
West Nile virus.
Yep. Yeah. It's nothing. There's nothing good that comes out of it. Even there's going to be more turbulence, or there already is, from climate change. I'm kind of a nervous flyer, even though I fly too much. But like I said, my husband moved us to Texas. I, spent my whole life in California. Everybody I know is there, except my daughter's now in New York. So what do you do? But do other things. And let's talk about that for a minute. How I think some people feel like, well, I can't do all those things. I can't walk, and I can give up my car, and I can't be a vegan. So therefore I'm not going to do anything. I say, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. None of us are perfect. You may be. It sounds like you're doing an awful lot, and thank you for that, and a good example. And I hope that others model that. But, look at, if this is what I say, if every American did, a 20th of what we do, that would be great, right? Nobody's perfect, and don't try to be, and don't think because you can't be that you can't even begin. It just doesn't work that way. We're all on a scale. The problem is we can't kind of do this slowly. It's really got to happen big time.
Well, what everybody can do is vote. Well, every adult over the age of 18 who is legally registered to vote can vote. And we have got to elect officials who, at the state, the local, federal level, who believe that climate change and protecting the environment is really a priority. And they understand that it's not economics or energy. It is in our economic best interest to protect the planet.
let's talk about that just for a minute. These politicians who don't believe in science, that should be like against the law. You shouldn't be able to run unless you pass a basic science test or say, yes, I believe in science. Sounds so silly, right? But that's what we're facing right now. And just seeing like how difficult it's been to get Americans to wear masks, to get vaccinated, to be respectful of the personal decisions that have public health impacts. That part is really discouraging, isn't it? When you think about climate change is more complex. And it's going to be much deadlier than COVID or pandemics ever will. We'll probably have pandemics as climate gets worse.
Right.
There's a connection there, but it doesn't bode well, does it? Although you think, and I know this is part of the effect, but not big enough or not obvious enough, that these are such sobering, dark times that, for all the frivolous distractions that drove me crazy, like people watching sports all day when they should be watching green TV, or, like, how are we going to save ourselves? I think people have sobered up at least, and seen that, it's a small world. B, it's not a kind of place that we thought it was, meaning, we're not isolated and insulated just because we live in the United States of America from horrible things happening, and that overnight things can go south, and that behavior change can absolutely make a difference.
Right.
Let's apply that to.
I do think that on COVID, at least the initial response was, by and large, until all these other people started this disinformation campaign, but initially people really did pull together, and a lot of good things happened. And I do think that is still possible to do.
You're nice. These are other people, Republicans, let's just call it what it is. One party does not, abide by science. Not all of them, but look at how many are not voting for Build Back Better.
Right.
It's insanity.
Right.
And it matters. It's not just politics, like you said. It so transcends politics, and it should. And that's the other discouraging thing. We're so polarized, and I blame the Republicans. I really do, because that's what I've seen happen. And I wish it wasn't the case. And not all Republicans, but the conservative, hypocritical branch of the Republican Party and some of the leaders are just out to lunch. When truth doesn't matter anymore, then how are we going to get, like, it doesn't matter if we get the facts out, half the country doesn't believe them. I don't know. I share your
pessimism. But also, I do think that the oil companies bear a huge responsibility. There's all kind of research showing that they knew decades ago that burning oil really was a climate factor, and they really haven't been held to account the way cigarette companies have been.
They've been rewarded with subsidies of billions of dollars still. Why should they change? And you say, well, don't they have grandkids? Well, apparently that's not as important as the mighty dollar, which is so appalling at this late stage, because we're seeing the impacts everywhere you look. And
that's certainly been the case with Joe Manchin, right? The Democrat from West Virginia, who should be totally on board with Build Back Better, but he gets tons of campaign contributions from the coal companies.
And should not be a Democrat, let alone a leader, really, without that kind of voting record. And what he's doing, holding this up, this has gone on for weeks, if not months. Come on, look yourself in the mirror and say, what am I doing? And even the coal lobbyists were saying, vote for Build Back Better. Come on, is it really just your personal pocket interests? How selfish and short-sighted is that? So that kind of stuff is infuriating. I'm sure you feel the same way. So what do you do with your fury and your frustration?
Well, I'm very active locally. Certainly in my own household, I've super insulated my house, and I have highly fuel efficient appliances. And after 4 years without a car, I did buy a plug-in hybrid. I still walk almost everywhere, but I really make my consumer choices count. And I vote. I always vote local elections, national elections. I live in Maryland, and even though the governor's Republican, he's very progressive, and he's been very supportive of it, taking action on climate change. And just many counties, including my county, have climate plans. They have really spent a lot of time developing climate plans for infrastructure and for clean energy sources, and to help people insulate and all those kinds of things. So I just, I feel like eco begins with ego. And by that, you're in the middle. I'm in the middle of my own sort of little whirlpool. I do what I can, and that sends a ripple effect out to my family and then it goes to my community, and then it goes to my county. And I just feel like I keep doing what I can do with my immediate impact in mind, but also the big picture. And I think that big picture, you've got to vote. I mean, that's my bottom line thing, is you have got to vote for people who accept the science, as you say, and who are going to take action to stop pollution, stop climate change. We haven't even talked about plastic, which is another horrible issue, but
I'll have to have you back to
know,
talk about that. Yes. And you're right. There's a lot happening at the local and even state levels in some states. And it's just nationally, it's just been abysmal.
right. Every time I hear about one of these rebel states saying that they want us to see it, I'm thinking, okay,
Be my guest.
be my guest.
Yeah. Try thinking that's going to protect you. It might protect us from them, but yeah. It's crazy. I mean, it's really sad where we are right now. And yet, especially if you're a parent, you can't give up on the future. I mean, on our kids and grandkids. And I don't know. I don't know how this is going to turn out. None of us do, but I know too much to stop fighting, to stop trying. And I know one of the groups you've been involved with is Moms Clean Air Force.
Right.
Tell us how people can get involved.
They're fabulous. They're an organization that really started to educate mothers particularly, but it's moms, parents, anybody who's interested, on the impact of pollution and carbon emissions on air quality, water quality, the climate, and so on. And now they've got probably 1.3 million members, and they're mobilizing moms all over the place to testify. They bring moms with babies into Washington, D.C., and they have a stroller brigade, and they push those strollers down the halls of Congress and meet with members of Congress to talk to them about strengthening clean air and clean water laws and energy laws. And it's something that's grown. I think when I got involved with them, they had something like 80,000 members already, which is significant, but they have really touched a nerve there. So that's really great.
It's hard to ignore moms, or it should be. And that was our thinking behind Don't Be Fueled. And, there's now Science Moms, this group that Catherine Hayhoe was part of.
Yeah.
Who's getting scientists who are women and mothers to speak out about this. I think that's going to be very effective. But we still need more. We still need a lot more. There's just no time to waste. And too much is getting wasted. Not just time. Resources, precious resources that our kids and grandkids are going to need, not to mention 7 generations down. We're supposed to think about, say, the Indians, and we're not even thinking 2nd generation. So let's just hope, I guess the silver green lining maybe, hopefully, will be that we've just sobered up as a society and don't give up. That failure should not be an option, but we should think about, the error of our ways and what we are, we reap what we sow. What are we sowing? Right.
Well, and I do think to constantly position it as a choice for the better. It's not necessarily a sacrifice. It's new, and people are afraid of doing new things, but you are making a choice for the better. You're making a choice for a better life, a healthier life, a more financially secure life. Even national security is impacted by all of this. It's very interesting. One of the groups that is most active on climate change is retired Navy officers. Retired admirals and retired fleet captains, because they know what hurricanes do to the fleet. And
also, insurance companies are getting very
companies, and of course, obviously, the health profession has been behind this for a long time, and meteorologists, and so there are an awful lot of groups who do understand how serious this is, and do what you can. As I say, start at home, make sure you vote, let people know what you're doing, use your social media to let people know what you're doing when you make a good choice.
Talk about it, as Catherine Hayhoe says.
And you'll be good.
And that's what Green TV, that's the void we're trying to fill, the green gap in programs.
Right, which is great.
Yeah, because even wonderful scientists like Michael Mann will go on MSNBC and say there's urgency, but there's agency. And then they thank him and go to commercial. Well, what can people do, and
Right.
besides change a light bulb and drive a more fuel efficient car, which is, a good place to start, and recycle. But that was so last century. We have to go way beyond that.
Right.
Last
Right. That's a
decade.
good way to put it. Yeah.
And there's so much more we can be doing. And I'll end on a positive note. What the best kept secret may be, I think you'll agree, Diane, is it feels good. You feel wiser, lighter, to be part of the solution. And you don't have to change everything. Just start with some things, but then keep going. Don't stop there. And the more you do that, the more you feel less guilty, more proactive. And it does grow. I mean, once this is going to be a mixed blessing. Once you know what you know, you can't unknow it, and
Right.
that's why we're trying to get more people to know what needs to be known, because if nothing else, it shouldn't be ignorance that destroys humanity.
Right.
Not in the
Well,
age of internet, media, being in touch all the time. It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
I do invite people to go to biggreenpurse.com, my website. There's just so much useful information there about what you can do on just about everything. So if you want to attract backyard birds, if you want to learn how to compost, if you want to figure out where to recycle your holiday electronics, please do stop by and leave a comment. I'll answer. I'd love to have you drop over to our Facebook webpage too. And just the more dialogue we have and the more we help each other, I think the better we all are.
That's wonderful, because I know how many tips you've had so many years ago. You do update it with the current, latest, greatest things you can do. That's wonderful to know. And we absolutely encourage our viewers to go there. I know you are, such a resource and such a treasure trove of this very information that people need to know long before most people were looking for it and asking about it. But that makes you an expert that we applaud. So thank you for all you've done, Diane.
And thank you for Green TV. I can't wait to keep tuning it in.
Well, tune in and let everybody in your circles and beyond to tune in, because our plans are to get enough subscribers to add content, to bring in some paid staff. We have a very dedicated small group of volunteers, and we really want to be 24/7. There's no time to waste. The fact that there are people who want to know more, and there isn't really any one place. There's lots of great climate podcasts out there, and there's all kinds of online, newsletters, in my inbox for sure, probably yours too, but they're not necessarily reaching the general public, the masses. And so we're trying to make it easy, because, you don't even have to watch Green TV, listen to it while you're cooking. But the way that we will have an impact is if we can grow and really have live programming on any time of the night or day. And then you don't have to just go watch a documentary that might be on a wonderful website, but what's the latest? And I really try to curate the best and the brightest and most articulate and passionate solutionaries out there, and very happy to have you on as one of my
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
early solutionaries. Okay. Thank you. Happy, healthy new year. We need you.
You
And
too.
we'll check back. We'll talk about plastics in a few months. We'll have you back.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, Diane MacEachern, Big Green Purse. Check it out. Thank you.